Hi, I'm Ed Amoroso from Tag Cyber, and I'm here with Jeff Raymond, who is the Vice President of Software Product Management at Arista. Jeff, how you doing? Welcome.
Great, Ed. Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Jeff, you are an expert in network segmentation and related topics, but before we do that, I always like to ask a little bit about you. How did you come to the role? How did you get interested in this topic?
Well, I think just being in networking for 20 plus years, there's so many aspects to networking that segmentation is always one of those that kind of bubbles to the top because it ties back to security and networking and security have always been pretty closely tied together. And so, at Arista, I've been in the product management role for over 7 years now, and we've always been looking to how we bring networking and security closer together with a lot of the different themes that we're talking about here in this session. But segmentation in particular is a way for the network to be much more relevant to the broader business security needs.
It's funny, you see it turn up now in both architecture and also compliance. That's very promising. That will drive demand. I think, if you're going to do one thing in the enterprise, like if you told me I could do one thing, I think I would pick segment the network because that's really the primary access control mechanism when you're dealing with big attack campaigns. Has that kind of been your experience? Like when people segment, they probably see good results very quickly.
Yeah, I think it's kind of this. It's certainly the goal. Some of the paths and the solutions to get there have been met with different challenges that I think we've, as an industry, tried to address over the years. And we can certainly talk about how Arista believes we're addressing them even better nowadays. But absolutely, in terms of the actual, direct kind of feedback loop or ROI of the segmentation technology, the network is really a great place or one of the, I'd say, cleanest places from our point of view to implement the segmentation technologies, because what you find is that every different part of the network has a different set of requirements. And sometimes we talk about, conveniently in one little not niche, but one particular use case. Like, for example, the data center, you have different applications that might need to be segmented. If you go to the campus, you have different types of devices that might need to be segmented, especially when we think about the IoT device explosion out there, let alone the users and the mobile device explosion out there. So there's different types of ways to segment, and then you apply that to cloud. And as people deploy more apps in the cloud, does segmentation policies follow, or do they have to create yet another policy or approach up there? So, but the nice thing is that the network is kind of the constant across all those different aspects. And so, independent of the various different use cases you have, the network can be hopefully a glue without having to kind of have 10 different segmentation approaches for every single type of device.
You reference policies. Where do they come from? Is it about sort of the access control objectives of the company? Is that where you start when you build these policies?
Yeah, that can be. It is the policies of the company and how you would express that and enforce that in the network. That's essentially what segmentation is. Sometimes those policies are built around logical groups. Like you have guests come onto the network, you have employees that come onto the network, and you have contractors that come onto the network. Those could be kind of logical groupings of people that might have different access control. It could be around other sorts of policies like limiting access to certain resources, where you need, for example, where a firewall would play a role and use and be that enforcement point at kind of the DMZ level within a network, where you're kind of internal and external type of policies as well. But fundamentally, it's how you constrain traffic out for business reasons. And so what you essentially end up doing is taking those business rules and trying to translate those into network policies.
Has it been your experience that people, for the most part, are moving away from kind of inside outside, like the perimeter? We talk about deperimeterization all the time, but I find in my consulting work and in our advisory work at TAG, there's still a lot of people who are very dependent on a perimeter, and it's still
Oh,
there. Security
absolutely. I mean,
is
we
it
sometimes we get ahead of. Sorry.
is hybrid the new model? Maybe is it that we
Well,
should?
I think that there's kind of where the history has been and then where we want to go, and it doesn't just shift overnight, right? Um, I think when you think of the traditional network traffic pattern, it was always kind of a north-south traffic pattern, right? And so when north-south being the application set up here and the client set down here, and so you kind of just controlled that flow between north and south. What we've seen, especially in the data center over the last probably even decade now, is the east-west traffic pattern is actually the more predominant traffic pattern. And so if you have this DMZ level inside a boundary, but the real traffic doesn't even flow across that boundary, you have to have new approaches. And so in particular, some of our macro segmentation technologies are designed to address that. And so that we can have kind of the same policy instantiated but enforced for east-west traffic as well as north-south traffic. And that's an interesting kind of development because of how the network has evolved. And it applies to other aspects of the network as well than just the data center.
Tell us a little more about the products. I know that's your job to share the innovation you guys are putting out in the marketplace. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about the new product offerings.
Yeah, sure. So basically, what we have from an Arista perspective, just to kind of baseline on our core products, when you think of the network offering, it really boils down to EOS, which is our network operating system. It's what runs all of our switches. The beauty of EOS is it's been built from the ground up to be a very proven, reliable operating system, but it also is the same exact OS that runs anywhere you run any of our switches. So you get that consistency and you reduce the number of variables that you really have to deal with in terms of running and certifying and validating so many different OSs out there. So EOS is kind of the core offering that we have. And then on top of that, we have Cloud Vision. Cloud Vision is our management plane application. And similarly, it's a consistent management plane that is multi-domain. And so you can apply it and use it whether you're using our switches in the data center, in the cloud, in the WAN, in the campus, even in containerized environments. So those are kind of the two core networking products from a software perspective that we have. And then thinking about it in the segmentation context, we have a suite of capabilities that we call macro segmentation services. I referenced this a moment ago, or MSS for short. And really what MSS is designed to do is really provide kind of the enforcement function and let Cloud Vision be kind of a liaison to orchestrate policy that can either be defined in Cloud Vision or it can be defined elsewhere, like in a firewall or a NAC identity system, and then translate that policy into enforcement at the switch level, where EOS would have a particular feature set to implement either redirection, so we can redirect traffic that's deemed interesting to a stateful firewall, for example, with one of our firewall partners, or it can do the enforcement itself in terms of being able to apply the group-based policy enforcement and either decide based on that orchestrated policy whether the traffic should be dropped at that boundary or if we allow it to proceed. So MSS is really the key. And we have MSS capabilities, as I mentioned, with firewall partner integration. So our partners like Palo Alto and Checkpoint and Fortinet. Then we have kind of more what we call MSS group segmentation, which is where we integrate with our partners like Forescout on the NAC side and others as well, like Aruba. And then we also have MSS host, which is where we would integrate the policy from the virtualized world really in the data center use case with VMware NSXT and be able to let those virtualized policies also extend to physical workloads via our integration with VMware NSX.
It's pretty exciting. Now, Jeff, when people have these a bunch of third parties that are snapping in, is that in a sense just an extension of cloud, or how would you guys recommend the segmentation extend to networks that have lots of third-party suppliers, partners, that kind of thing. Pretty typical complex modern network. What do you guys recommend for those kinds of networks?
Well, when you think about, at least if I'm interpreting your question right, think about in third party, the kind of the stack, if you will, like
Yeah,
how do you connect into the broader infrastructure stack? And really, our approach at Arista has been to try to be as open as possible. And this is in direct contrast to many other vendors that try to build out the complete stack themselves, and then you kind of have to go, complete vendor end to end to get anything to actually work. And then it's kind of with that lock-in that you end up finding as a customer that you have to do it the vendor's way, or it's not, the value isn't actually derived. We've always believed in not just openness from a kind of a protocol perspective and using standards to approach it, but also giving customers choice and letting them choose best of breed. In particular, Arista has always been kind of focused on allowing or kind of trying to be focused and trying to be the best at what we do, but realizing that there's other technology spaces that are adjacent to us where we can let other vendors be the best at what they do. And so letting customers choose that best of breed infrastructure is effectively what we're about. So in the segmentation context, we don't want to necessarily force customers to like buy just one firewall that we work with. We want to have an open API that integrates with multiple firewall partners, and that's exactly what we've done. And similarly in the identity NAC space with integrations with multiple technology partners there. So really it's about kind of bring your own third-party system, whether, and making sure that our approach is extensible enough to integrate with those so that you get that choice. And you don't have that lock.
Makes it easier to set up a defense because you can be more flexible. And you have better choices. Like you're not sort of stuck with the thing that arrived on the loading dock 2 years ago, and it would take you 6 months to replace. It's nice to have those open interfaces. So glad you guys are doing it that way. That's really wonderful. Yeah. Well, Jeff, I really want to thank you for spending some time. I know you got a super busy schedule. We're glad we were able to get a little window of your time today. But on behalf of everybody listening, thanks so much for sharing a lot of really useful information.
All right, Ed. Thank you. I appreciate your time too, and great to be with you.
Great to see you, Jeff. And thanks everyone for watching.